Very good. And so you are originally from the Dominican Republic. And so whereabouts are you from? And what was it like growing up here?
Yes, I am from the Dominican Republic. My family lived in the south part of the island, specifically in a region that is not very well known by tourism, but I consider the most beautiful, which is Barahona. But we are more specifically on a town called Tamayo. That's where my family comes from. And it's like 10 minutes away from Barahona, or perhaps a little more, 20. Beautiful town. So we all grew up in there. I was born in Barahona, and I lived in Tamayo, I would say the first 5 years of my life. We moved to Santo Domingo, the capital of the island.
Okay. And what was the reasoning for doing that?
My mother was single then with two kids and an extended family, and they wanted to have an education. My mother needed to complete her college studies, and the younger sister also. So for the best of our education and opportunities, the family moved to the capital, Santo Domingo. My parents divorced very young. I don't even have memories of my mother being married to my father. I want to share this with you, Christian. There was a tragic event in my family, and I think that event prompted what ultimately happened that shaped the future back then. I come from a family of many kids. So my grandmother had a lot of kids. And she really was focused on education back then. And she had two of her oldest kids that had already completed college. So in the family, there were two big promises. The firstborn, which was already an engineer with honors, and the second one was a resident in anesthesia. He was to be a physician, an anesthesiologist. And there was the big promise for our family were in these two people, in my uncles. But then the Civil War came into the Dominican Republic, and unfortunately, they were lost. They were not in the revolution. They were just trying to go back from the capital to Tamayo, but they were never found again, ever to this day. They were the hope and the first college graduates of our generation, and we lost them like that. So as soon as the Civil War of 1965, as soon as the Civil War finished, then it was time to migrate. It was time to start finding a new future for the family.
Uh-huh. And so your mom kind of took it upon herself then
Mhm.
to pick up and say, okay, well, I can do this too.
Yes, she was the older sister. So she took the younger sister. She took the two kids of her oldest brother. They were orphans back then. She took us, me and my sister, and there we go to Santo Domingo to start a new life.
Wow.
Yeah, she was now the provider of the family, and she took upon herself not only us, her two kids, but also the two kids of her brother who just died on the revolution or whatever happened, we don't know, and her younger siblings. And we moved to Santo Domingo. My uncle was the first person that I remember owning a car in that town. A town where people will go to the windows because they had never seen a car. He was, a valedictorian of his class, an engineer, and the promise of a whole family. And the other one was about to complete, medicine as an anesthesiologist. Well, it was time of changes.
Mhm.
I started my first grade in Santo Domingo, and I would go to school with my sister and my cousins. And then we will just get adapted to a new life. I loved being at school. I had an internal reward
Mm-hmm.
in learning.
Mm-hmm.
I was very interested in learning. However, at the same time, I was dealing not only with all the changes, but also with the political position of my family. So my other uncles, the younger ones, they were focused on education, as all my family,
Mm-hmm.
but they were also focused on ideas and views and political points of view
Mm-hmm.
that put them at risk of being persecuted. And that certainly happened back then. It was a very polarized situation. So my uncles, my mother's younger brothers, they were political figures, not from being allies of the government back then, but for being a stand for other ideas. And that's the environment that we grew up on.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant a lot of persecution, a lot of political conflicts that I remember as a child, because today, thank God, we have democracy. No child today is expecting the police to come with arms and every kind of everything you could possibly imagine. But I experienced that as a child because it was a time of unrest in my country, and my uncles were persecuted because of, I guess, they were political prisoners, and they imprisoned them also.
Did you experience that in your home
Absolutely, all the times.
and in Santo Domingo?
Yes, we never knew one night we will sleep full night, and one night we're gonna have 30 police officers in our homes with the big arms and everything. My uncle, Plinio Matos Moquete, he is legendary in my country from back then. And this is my mom's younger brother. And my other uncle, Manuel, he is also legendary for the political positions that they took. And back then, being against the main ideas was a death sentence. So they were political prisoners, period. After Trujillo, at that then we have Trujillo was killed in 1960. Then Juan Bosch came to power, democratically elected, and he lasted 7 months. There was I don't know how to say this in English, it's like a golpe de Estado, a coup. There was a coup there, and then a transitional government came. The revolution came. We lost the two family members. They were not they were not in politics. They were professionals. And that tragedy happened, and then we moved to Santo Domingo, and then Balaguer comes in power. And then I come from a divided family. Let me put it this way. My uncles, the younger generation, they were against Balaguer and all the ideas that he represented.
Mm-hmm.
And my father's side, he was one of the Balaguer's most prominent political figures. So we grew up in that dichotomy. Absolutely, they were part of the new desire of the Dominican society to not live in a dictatorial political arena anymore after 30 years. They were the stand for democracy in my country, and they pay high prices for it.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them with their lives, which I remember, they were my little uncles as well. Right. So I grew up into that environment, and it was not an easy situation to live with.
Do you feel that shaped you as you got older?
Well, I think I go to my family. I saw the resilience. I saw how we stood up from tragedy. I saw my uncles being in jail, incarcerated, and I saw my family supporting her brothers.
Mhm.
I saw them come out, build their lives, get a diploma, a lawyer, and a Premio Nobel de Literatura. Like my cousin Manuel, he gained the Nobel Prize of the Dominican Literature 2 years ago. Manuel Matos Moquete. I don't know if you know him. So I see that on my family. I see the resilience, the commitment to education. I see how all these politicians in my country, they have put themselves into the money game. And I'm so proud that my uncles never, ever played that game. And I want to really acknowledge the political members of my family, my uncles, because integrity has been their game since back then in the 60s until now. So I'm very proud to say that they have set an example for us that has nothing to do with this horrible game of stealing the money that belongs to the people. I have a very interesting story to share with you. I Because of my father's position in the government, my father was one of the top leaders of the government. My father, a lawyer, he had a lot of benefits. He was a political figure. He was the president of the Senate. So,
Oh,
and then that meant that I went to private school. I remember I grew up in a Catholic school, and it was a wonderful experience. However, the last year of my high school, 12th grade, for reasons that had everything to do with the choices that I made that were not the best choices, I could not complete the high school in this private school. And my mother had to take me to a public school. I had never been into a public school in the Dominican Republic. Now it was time for me to complete my education at a public school. And that was the best experience of my life. That year, in the public school, Instituto de Señoritas Salome Ureña, I really flourished. I really find my passion even more for education.
uh-huh.
And I graduated at the top of my class. And most of all, I realized that it doesn't really matter where you are. It matters where you choose to be. So I chose to be top of my class. And I was so happy that I had the opportunity to change schools.
What was it, if I can ask, that you, or the choice that you made, because we all make these choices. Usually they're choices that we make that ultimately change change for the better or the worse for our lives. But what was it that the choice that you made, that you needed to leave that school and go to the public school?
Well, I was not an excellent student when I was in the Catholic school. I was dealing with the two worlds that I was living on, from my father's side and from the
Your mom's.
uncertainty, the political situation with my uncles. That that the uncertainty of knowing if my mother was going to be incarcerated the next day or my uncles are going to be killed from the persecution. That was a very hard to deal with. So,
But did your uncles disappeared?
They were incarcerated. They were in jail, yes. And then one of them, when he completed his jail term, when he was supposed to be released, he was deported to Europe from the present to the airport. And we didn't know. We didn't have the chance to see. In the early Balaguer era opposition, they were activists. Many of them were killed or assassinated, and I knew many of them because I used to play with them as a child. but they continued to be activists.
Okay.
Then one of my uncles, he traveled. He left the country to get ready, and then he came back, and he came back with a false identity because he was an activist. And they caught him in the airport, and he went to jail for that, crime. And he was sentenced to 3 years. That's Manuel. That's el Premio Nacional de Literatura. No sabes si lo conoces, se llama Manuel Matos Muquete. Cuando él regresó, a él lo apresan, le encuentran un pasaporte falso y lo apresan por 3 años. Mi otro tío, Plinio, estaba huyendo porque él era un prófugo ya de la justicia. He was an activist, an opponent of the Balaguer regime, and he was on the loose, huyendo. Eventually, después también agarran a Plinio y están los dos presos.
I understand they were both in jail.
They were in jail. Entonces, cuando Manuel cumple los 3 años, the one who came, with una identidad falsa, a Manuel, cuando nosotros estamos listos para recibirlo, lo deportan para Francia.
Wow. So they deported him to France after he served the 3 years in jail. Okay.
Yes. ¿Tú sabes quién es Camaño? El coronel Camaño. Él era un oponente a Balaguer. Es parte de la historia dominicana. Ese coronel Camaño era el amigo de mi tío.
Okay.
Y esa fue una historia política, entonces a él lo deportan y mi otro tío se queda preso. 7 años.
So your other uncle was in jail for 7 years?
Sí, era el preso político más famoso de la historia dominicana. Se llama Plinio Matos Muquete. Entonces yo estaba ya tú sabes, no me portaba bien en el colegio. I was not giving my full potential.
Right. Because here you had here you had on one side your dad, who was the president,
one of the top Balaguer whatever
regime, and then on your other side you had the oppression of your uncles who were activists against that regime. So I can't imagine why you didn't behave in school. Like
I was focused and fooling around.
That moment of going to public school, I'm sure it was completely different. Yet, for you, it's kind of a gift from God.
Well, the expectation was that it was going to be a setback. However, it was a liberation. I really got a blessing. I didn't have the constraints of the old school.
Right.
It was a fresh start for me.
Right.
It was a fresh start.
Being the daughter of that political figure, you had to probably be a certain way. You could only say certain things. You could only act a certain way. And you probably couldn't express your feelings at all.
It was, I don't even know. What I know, Chris, is I was the underdog. Single mother, not a lot of money. My father had already remarried. He has built another family. He was very famous and very powerful. And I was the underdog.
Right.
All throughout my infancy. But the moment that I went to this new school, I found a new path for myself and my life. And it was a blessing, an opportunity to start fresh from the public school where perhaps I belonged to since the beginning. I had known since I was very young that my career was medicine. I had a passion for medicine, and there was no question. There was no psychological evaluation or counseling where you go, where you don't go. Right. When my mom asked it, I said, I don't need any of that. I'm going to be a doctor. And there I go. So I decided to go to my father's office. And he ran a very busy office. And I go there to speak with my father. And my father was very busy. So he would have a few minutes for me. He was a loving father. And I loved my father. I honor my father. But back then, I go there to tell my father that I was going to be a doctor. So I remember like now, my father was sitting at his desk. There was a full waiting room for him. And then he said, okay, what are you here? I said, okay, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to be a doctor. And I told him that I was going to be a doctor at the public university, which is the Universidad Autónoma de Santo Domingo. So when I disclosed to my father that I was going to be a doctor, my father stops what he was doing and he looks at me. And he did to me what I consider the hallmark of my future. So that's what my father said. He looks at me top to bottom. He puts a face like I was talking to him in another language. And he said, Doctor, tú? Tú, doctora? Like, are you going to be a doctor? Like, on his face, I had no chance to be a doctor. He doubted me 100%. And he let me know. Yes, he did. And he let me know.
Where did this great doubt come from?
Well, to this day, I don't know where it came from, but I know what it did for me. Certainly. Was the biggest gift I ever received. That's what I really needed from him, and he gave it to me. And instead of being, resentful of him, I'm grateful.
Right.
Because he gave me the opportunity to find my passion, to show my passion, and to really believe on myself above and beyond what he or anyone could ever said. So I decided at that moment that I was going to be a doctor, and there was nothing he could do to prevent it. And that was a gift. I went to Universidad Autónoma de Santo Domingo. It was a 7 years program.
Okay.
So I started my curriculum, and I realized soon, few semesters in, that I needed to get some financial support, more than the one I waiting for my family. My mother was a single mother, a lot of kids, a lot of family. So I went to my college, and it was 7 years. I decided to do it in 6 years. So what I decided was that I was not going to take any breaks. So I worked all the breaks. I didn't take breaks, and I decided that I needed a job also. So I took a job as a registrant assistant in the college. Then an opportunity showed, and they wanted to have a position as a teacher's assistant, and I decided that I needed to make that money. So for financial reasons, I presented myself, and my father was very upset because he thought I was going to take this as an excuse to not complete the curriculum, not complete the career. But I knew that I was not. I'm talking about this era. I finished my career with 2 books. That's all my mother could afford. 2 books. So I needed to take notes. So I was so good at taking notes in my notes that I will write the jokes that my teachers will put into the classroom. I wrote the jokes. So it was not that he didn't support me. It was that his attention was not in putting a red carpet so I could fulfill my dream.
Right.
Then he was focused on his life and his career and whatever he was doing. My mother was single too. The brothers were incarcerating or, running so they're not killed. So, and then my mother had one job, and one day Balaguer says she was a professor, a teacher in one of the public schools. He fired her out of no reason with 6 kids, single mother, and there was no income. I grew up in this financial uncertainty. So when I was to college, I saw my mother and the needs. I said, listen, I'm going to work. I'm not going to take 7 years on this career. I'm going to do it in 6. I'm not going to take no breaks, and I'm going to work. One of the lessons that I learned that I share with my family, I mean, the parents and the families that I take care of, is we need to use our full potential.
Mm-hmm.
Many times as parents said, oh, I don't want them to work because they are studying. Let them work.
Right.
It's the best thing that could happen.
I
It was the best thing that could happen to a young person.
Yeah, I remember, and then myself, like even going through university, my mom helped me also. But I mean, I had 3 jobs.
You know, another thing, Chris, that I want to point out to our young people is, you know, if I look back and I said, okay, I didn't have the responsibility to support my mother. I was in college. It's not my business. And you could look at it that way. But I said, okay, what about the muscle that you gain when you start being financially present, financially strong at a young age? When you're not a taker, but you start to become a giver. What is presented to you? It certainly did for me. I started working when I was 13, and I started paying my mother's bill when I was 17. And I am grateful. I think that had been something that had allowed me to grow. There was an advertisement in a newspaper for a scholarship in Brazil. They were offering a scholarship for Dominican doctors to do a specialty in Brazil. So that was a small advertisement. It was a Friday, and they were going to give a test. You have to take a test. So I remember that.
In Spanish or Portuguese?
In Portuguese.
Oh, did you speak Portuguese?
Ever. I think that's a testament of what God has done into my life.
Right.
It's very clear to me. So I learned on this newspaper on a Friday that on Monday they're going to give this scholarship, but you're going to have to go take a test in Portuguese. So I decided that I was going to present myself to the test and take the test. And by God's grace, I passed the test.
Oh my God. That's just incredible.
Don't ask me what they asked me because I don't remember. Yes. So I won the scholarship. Months later, I am going to Brazil, Sao Paulo, where I did my first pediatric residency training. I trained at Escola Paulista in Sao Paulo for pediatrics.
Still in Portuguese?
Oh, everything in Portuguese, absolutely.
Yeah. And you didn't know Portuguese?
Not at all.
Yes, I mean, I know Portuguese a little similar to Spanish, however, not exactly.
Yeah, there are 2 different languages. You know, the pronunciation, the accent, we share the Latin roots, but it's 2 different languages. So I learned Portuguese when I went to Brazil, and I completed my residency training program at Escola Paulista. Mm-hmm. Yes, well, when I went to the Stony Brook University Hospital, when I started my program there for my second pediatric residency training, I was the only Spanish speaking in the program. It was a big program. It's a university hospital. And I had been the only second Spanish speaking person to go through this program. The prior one was a lady who was born here. She was Puerto Rican, but I was the first one born outside of the United States. And I not only was a trainee, a resident, I was also an official translator, because the community of people that were there, Spanish speaking parents. So I really became the translator of these families. I remember being in the ICU, dealing with catastrophic news, and how I had to be the translator for my professors, for my attendings, to translate for these families. So that presented both a huge challenge and a huge opportunity. Well, the challenge was to deal with the suffering of kids, to have to, translate this news for these families, because they were seriously ill kids. When they get to us, it's because they're not there. It was a tertiary hospital,
Right.
and the opportunity was to learn and to experience and to develop a connection and a relationship with a community of Spanish speaking people.